The strange disappearance of Keith Parkins. On April 10th, 1952, 2-year-old Keith Parkins was playing with his older brothers on a cattle ranch in Ritter, Oregon. While playing near a barn on the property, his older brother left, headed back for lunch, leaving Keith at the barn. When his mother realized Keith hadn't returned, she headed back to find him. To her shock, Keith had vanished without a trace. Edna, Alan, Keith, and his 2 brothers were visiting Edna's parents in Ritter. The property they were visiting was a cattle ranch. The surrounding area could be considered cattle land. Edna described the conditions that day as cold, with patches of snow on the ground. Keith and his older brother had gone to the barn to see the new calf. When Edna called the boys back to the house for lunch, the 2 older brothers came back, but not Keith. When his brothers were asked what happened to Keith, they said he went around the barn. So the brothers headed back to the barn to look for Keith. When they got back to the barn, Keith was gone, with no trace of where he went. That afternoon, realizing Keith was gone, a search started within hours. Edna noted that it wasn't organized like a modern team, but the initial searchers knew what they were doing. They started in a line of people, spread out within speaking distance, and started searching. At the peak of the search, it was estimated that over 200 people were in the field searching for Keith. The search continued through the night and into the morning. At some point in the search, around 3 miles from where Keith was last seen, searchers found footprints that walked through a herd of cattle. Outside of these tracks, no other clues were ever found of Keith's disappearance. Around 7 a.m. the next day, a searcher found Keith alive in Skull Canyon, roughly 12 miles from where he was last seen. Laid face down in the snow with his hat and coat beside him. His body was stiff from the cold and he couldn't move. His face had been scratched pretty bad, according to his mother. His clothing was also ripped up from possibly trying to get through a barbed wire fence. He was flown to a nearby hospital via a private plane and eventually made a full recovery. The key takeaways from this case: it was lunchtime, 12 p.m., when he had disappeared, and it was about 7 a.m. the next morning when he was found, which means that he would have to have traveled 8 to 12 miles in the course of 19 hours, a feat that is nearly impossible for a grown man, much less than a 2-year-old child. His clothing was ripped up and his face was scratched all over. What could have caused this at the time? Law enforcement suspected barbed wire fence caused by this, but in an interview, Keith mentions a cat scratched him. Could he have encountered a cougar? This case will never fully be solved, but speculating is half the fun, I guess. What do you think happened in those 19 hours that he went missing?